Welcome everybody to Eye of the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. So today's pick a card reading was a viewer request. The viewer asked me to do a reading about those sort of problems that keep recurring in life, those sort of challenges that come up. It could be a type of relationship you keep seeming to end up in. It could be family issues that keep recurring and never get resolved. It could be career challenges that you keep seeming to run into, or creative challenges. It could be any of those things. Or it could be what we call wicked problems, where they're very complex and the interrelationship of the various variables around it could mean that fixing up one part makes another part more problematic. And it takes a very nuanced strategic approach to get the best of all possible outcomes out of a scenario like that. So those are the sort of things we're going to look at today. We'll look at a couple that may or may not be related. We'll look at what seems to be underlying them, what sort of things aren't you seeing about it that could help, and then look at Spirit's advice to look at various aspects in your life to get a strategic approach to it. As always, it's important to pick the right pile or piles, and by all means go to more than one if you feel drawn to more than one, because it might be that one issue is in one and one issue is in the other, given this is a collective reading. And because we are dealing with pretty sensitive things, make sure that you only take what resonates to you and leave the rest. And if you don't feel that you connect with the reading, don't try and live into it, because this is going to go potentially quite deep. So make sure that it's actually working for you. To help with the pile selection, I'm using different tarot decks for the different readings, because that sometimes has different energies that you might connect to. So for pile 1, I have the Journey of the Sacred Bee Tarot, and I'm using the Devil card for each of these because I feel it represents what we get bound to, the things that trap us in a way that we need to find our way out of. For pile number 2, I have the Crooked Cat Tarot. For pile number 3, I have the Rebirth Tarot. And for pile number 4, this is the Wisdom of the Unknown Tarot. Its Devil card is Temptation, but it's effectively the same energy, the same sort of card. So it may be the deck that calls you, it may be the imagery here that calls you, it might be numbers, could be anything. If you need to pause the video, then by all means do so before continuing. But when you know what reading or readings you are drawn to, I will have the timestamps in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. So these cards represent the two areas that we're going to look at that may or may not be related, either directly or indirectly. These are some further cards we'll look at to further define them before going to tarot. But what I would say looking at these is that I do think that they're probably separate. There could be some connection between them on some levels, but I think we're looking at two different things. I think the first thing we're looking at is recurring patterns, either in relationships or potentially career. This is most likely, I think, to be in relationship, but the energy could work on either level to some extent. What we're seeing here is you feeling there is almost an ideal, a way to have a relationship, a way to have a career, whatever it might be, a creative vision, whatever it is. And you keep on keeping on and trying again and again. So if it was a relationship, it feels like it's on-off sort of scenario, or trying to get it to go to the next level, and then it sort of seems to revert. There's a sense with the 24th hexagram here, which is about return, about cycles, returning, processing. And with the salmon as a totem, again, this sort of fish that will go through cycles and return to various sort of riverbeds or whatever at particular times, to a particular cycle of life, that you return and you return and you return, that you are the king or queen of resurrection. You are somebody who really feels that you can be the comeback king. You know, you can be the person who is all about recovery, reprisal, you know, bringing it back and looking at it and giving it a do-over. The problem you've got, however, with the Ghost of the Pumpkin Patch is that you've got to make a decision, because that particular card says count your blessings. It says there is something in whatever this is, whether it's the type of love you're looking for, an actual relationship that's on and off, a career thing, whatever it might be, there is something there. But in always trying to get this to be the ideal, and it's a very personal ideal, I think, you lose more and more of yourself each time. It's like each time you try, you actually, instead of getting closer to what you want, you're getting further away. So if it's a pattern between relationships, you keep being drawn to the same sort of person and hoping to fix it this time. If it is a relationship you keep going back to, it's like you keep putting more and more of yourself into it. And to some degree that gives you some control over it, but it's at a cost of you losing more and more of who you are and what you really want from the relationship, or as I say, from the career. So this is about being almost too tenacious and going over and over and over something to try and get to an ideal that maybe isn't even really that true to you. Down here, there's a thirst for knowledge, almost an obsessive thirst for knowledge, because we have the lady with a Bosch egg, which is about ancient wisdom. You may be quite psychic, I think, or very psychic. In fact, you may download a lot of stuff psychically. You may be drawn to psychic sort of things or ancient wisdom or knowledge in some way. And you see the getting of wisdom as a true opportunity, but it's something that you're constantly looking for. It's like you're constantly trying to find the piece of wisdom. You're like an alchemist looking for the philosopher's stone. There's a sort of sense of it always feels a bit out of reach, the perfect answer, the perfect thing to be studying, the perfect qualification, whatever it might be. And the thirst is overtaking the enjoyment and, in fact, the experience of it. So one of these things is about not finding the exact relationship or exact career that you want and just going on and on and on trying to get it. The other is like feeling like you're on this endless search for information and knowledge, and one may connect to the other. This knowledge may be to try and sort this issue out, but I think they're actually two different things. I think that's what Spirit's trying to say. One is about an ideal and about whether you lose yourself in trying to live into that ideal. The other is about, maybe it's not just about the journey, maybe it's about enjoying the knowledge that you have. Let's see what the Heart Code Oracles have to say about each. So in the well-being we have dental, we have trust around lifestyle, and judgment around relationship. Yeah, I think the dental I'll come to. I can see how that might connect on a couple of levels, but it's very specific well-being wise. But certainly trust and judgment. This is almost the issue, because if you sit in trust in a relationship, you don't necessarily try to make it exactly what you want it to be. You just try and see what it is going to be, and you allow, in a sense, that salmon energy to be more free-flowing. But if you have an idea in your head about relationships, then you'll sit in judgment. And there is a tendency for us in relationships to do that when we feel insecure. We want to sit and judge, because then we are the ones, we're deciding, do we give it another go? What are the terms and so forth? It gives you a certain feeling of power, but this is suggesting that it's illusory and that you're losing yourself with that. I think dental is coming through on two levels. One is that it's got to do with the mouth. So I think that's talking about speaking. It's about speaking truth. It's speaking openly with trust and without judgment to see whether or not it is worth keeping on resurrecting something, or whether it's better to move on and find a different pattern. The other side of it is, I think that when you are feeling a lack of trust, you're feeling judged, or you're feeling out of control in this constant cycle, you may grind your teeth. I mean, grinding your teeth has that sense of just going on and on and on and on as well too. So it just might be Spirit's suggestion to check out to see whether you do that potentially in your sleep. Okay, let's have a look at the other one. We have vision, victory, and bystander. Okay. So I'm feeling relationship here is in your relationship to knowledge, learning, and so forth. And you are very good at it. See, this is part of the reason that you do it. You're very clever. You're able to sort of learn things very quickly, go into depths very quickly. You have great vision and so forth. And you draw in, I think, clairvoyant vision and things like that with the lady with the Bosch egg as well. But I think what this is saying is that if you are constantly feeling the thirst for more, that you're not really getting to it, it's because you're almost doing it one step removed. It's like, instead of studying a PhD, for instance, and doing your primary research, you're reading other people's secondary research. Or it's like you read about certain sort of medical processes but don't actually do them yourself, or whatever the kind of knowledge that you're getting, it's sort of one step removed. It's theoretic rather than experiential. And I think that Spirit is saying here that the true satiation of the issue is to do something experiential. Look to build your knowledge in something that you can do through direct experience, not just through reading or through listening to lectures or through following those that have gone before. Because you do have a vision. That's where this hunger is coming from. You do have a vision and a connection to wisdom that is about you that you can take forward. Okay, so let's have a look with tarot for a little bit more information about these, after which we will ask tarot for what you're not seeing. Okay, so to start with, I definitely think, I did wonder whether this was around career, but it does very much feel like relationship to me, and I suspect it is. Or if it's career, it's something that's very, very heartfelt, because we have the Three of Swords here. So we have pain and a difficulty in letting go. When it's reversed, it's hard to let that pain go and so forth. To make a material decision with the Two of Discs about, do I stick with this and give it another go, maybe a little bit more reciprocally based rather than me trying to straitjacket it into something, or do I release myself from the kind of bondage I feel around this? Is it something that I can make last, which is with the King of Discs reversed? So certainly in its current form, and if you keep doing what you're doing around this relationship, or if it's a pattern of relationships, if you keep doing the same thing, then you're going to have the same result, I would say, and you're going to feel more and more trapped in this pattern. But it may be just a matter of kind of perspective. And one of the things I'm getting from this is I feel like some of what's happening while you're going through this sort of process is almost like a kind of a programming, whether we're aware of it or not, particularly around relationships. We're often programmed a bit by the stories we read when we were children, the movies we watch, the books we read. So to give you an example, if you're looking at fairy stories, if you really love Cinderella, then you may be looking for somebody to take you away from the day-to-day into something more magical and rich and exciting and so forth. If you love Beauty and the Beast, you might be looking to heal someone, heal the beast in somebody, that you feel that's how you get true love. If you liked reading Jane Austen, you're probably looking for a Mr. Darcy type or something along those lines, somebody who is very romantic but maybe a bit reserved and very socially proper. But if you liked Wuthering Heights, then you want Heathcliff with all the passion and denial and obsession and so forth. So there's something, I think, around an idea you have that you keep trying to replicate as opposed to experiencing it. And to some degree that does have a connection between the two, because we have the bystander for relationships. So it's kind of like, don't live somebody else's idea about relationships, live the one that's real that you're experiencing, and then decide whether or not it is turning into something that you are happy in, not that it fits some pre-programmed idea about what relationships should be. Then down here, when we're looking at the search for knowledge, firstly, you don't need to search it through conventional means. So I mean, if you are highly academic, for instance, fine, but it's time now to do something that's more you, that is less about the study books and more about you. With the Eight of Pentacles reversed, that's telling me that you've got most of what you need in your kit bag. It's really about how you apply it. And some of that needs to be connected to your heart, something that you love, that you wouldn't be a relationship bystander for. If you do that, you may well find the right connection. In fact, it may be these two things that are connected in a different way. It may be that it is in the search for the true, authentic wisdom that you find the right relationship, as opposed to the programmed relationship that you might be following up here. And when you do that, you actually start to deal with the fact that you've suppressed your heart around the theory. You've made yourself step back around the theory of the getting of wisdom. Okay, so let's ask what you're not seeing. Okay, it's interesting that they're all reversed, and I think there is a sort of energy around that for you, around this, and it's not surprising for this type of topic anyway. But I think it is all about what is in common between these two things is denying your own experience and living into a theory. So it's interesting that we have the Ten of Swords reversed. So we have a sense that this is something not not, that is causing you mental pain, that is not causing you joy and so forth. And you can release yourself from the mental structures that the Ten of Swords represents by having it reversed, then you would actually get somewhere. But at the moment, because you're staying in that sort of mental straitjacket, you are not letting the emotional things take root. This Ace of water or Ace of Cups here is reversed, so it's not fulfilling your heart. And with the Seven of Discs reversed, or Seven of Pentacles, that means that the investment that you're putting into things cannot give you the return you want. So what this is effectively saying is, whether it's in love or career, if that is in career, and or in the getting of skills, wisdom and so forth, you won't get the return on your investment until you get out of the mental straitjacket that is suppressing your heart. So really there's a pattern here about living in theory and trying to live into it rather than living in your own life, if that makes sense. So let's see what advice we can look at. So we're going to look at relationships, career, and then spiritual advice. So starting first with relationships, we'll look at what could be healed in relationships for you. We have rejection. Okay, so maybe part of this pattern about going back and sort of redoing things is that you feel rejected, either rejected from your childhood in relationships around your family, or maybe it's a relationship where you sort of feel rejected and then you get back together and then you feel rejected again and so forth. It just might be saying there's a pattern here about putting too much into an idea, as I say, or even too much power to somebody else to decide whether or not they'll live up to what you want as opposed to the experience. So you need to heal that sense of rejection. And then there might also be some rejection around academia. Maybe some of you didn't sort of do academic study or anything like that, and so you'd feel rejected because you didn't have the sort of PhD or the masters or something. But you have a lot going for you if you just go into the experience of it and you use your life as part of your wisdom. All right, let's see an energetic advice around relationships for you. And we have South, which is adventure. Yeah, have a bit of fun. Like, don't think about the outcome. Just have a bit of fun. Just have an adventure, experience it, stop living into the sort of ideas that you have about it. Okay, so then for career, we'll just pull a couple of cards around advice for career, if any of this is connecting to career patterns for you. Communication, equipment and product. Okay. So it looks as though, or it may well be that you are in fields that have to do with your career around communication or about the production of equipment and so forth. Otherwise, it's saying that anything that you're trying to do around a career, so if this is picking up career energy around something that never quite takes, look at how you're communicating your vision and look at the product and the equipment that you're using to do it. So there might be some very practical things that you could calibrate that would stop a perpetual pattern. And if that's part of what you're trying to sort out and work out, then I think communicate to people who could provide equipment and product that you want to have a hands-on experience of it. You want to sort of see it in motion, so to speak, rather than just sort of buy off the web or something like that. All right, and then let's have a look at spiritual energy around you. Okay, all right. So I think part of your issue, pile one, around the getting of wisdom, which I think is the spiritual side of things here, is that you actually have a lot of wisdom from other lives and even from what you've done. You could very easily have risen to the sort of level of a priestess in one or more sorts of religions, spiritual practices, etc. But you also have spent time being a warrior, like a spiritual warrior. And I think in this life, it's all very academic. It's all very removed. So getting back into that spirit of the deep knowledge being used for a cause, and so then you're not a bystander anymore, you're actually taking it forward and using it. That way you will unlock that sort of recurring sense of, I'm getting knowledge, but I just don't feel like it's satiating my need and so forth. All right, so now we want to have a look at what questions might be useful to ask yourself to deal with one or both of these. So I'm using the Stories Oracle, which has constellations and a question. It can be hard to read the question, so I'll read it out and then put it down. So these are just questions that might help you work through these recurring or wicked problems. So firstly, we've got the Canes Vanatici. What if you were strong enough to stand alone, but wise enough to accept the support of others? Okay, so don't be a bystander. Have the experience and connect in with others in whatever problem you're trying to deal with, whatever problem you're trying to solve. Collaborate and communicate with others who can help you around equipment and product if it's around a career issue. And if it's in relationship, don't feel you have to dictate it all. Make it a collaborative energy. All right, and then one other question that could help you. We have Aries. What if you could start afresh? Yeah, and look, that may be something to ask in one or other of these things. It may be that if this is a relationship that keeps recurring, start afresh. Maybe it isn't worth going back again and again and again, just to potentially feel rejected or not loved in the way that you want again and again and again. If it's around your learning, maybe you've got all that you needed from before and now it's to start afresh in something that really more connects to a cause or to something that's true to you and it's experiential to you. Okay, so now we're going to sort of just do some final advice around this. So the first thing that I want to do is pull a couple of cards to show you the signs you will see when you're starting to have a breakthrough, and then we're going to finish off with some angel numbers for you. So signs that you will see when you're really starting to get a breakthrough on these issues. Lovers and Feathers. Okay. So it may be that once you break through some of this energy, you bring love energy in. If you felt alone and on the dating scene all the time and trying and going back and back and back, you'll know you're right when you actually find a connection. That's a very literal way of reading that. It may also be that you see lovers, you're around, in the community, you might read about them, you might see movies about them, you might hear songs about them. So things like that might tell you that you're aligning, I think, a bit more with yourself and your heart and less with your head. And then you can be as light as a feather. So you may literally see feathers floating through the air. You may see them on patterns on clothes or something like that. But I think you'll also feel as light as a feather. I think you're weighing yourself down with the philosophies that you have and the sort of programming that you have, and you'll sort of feel a lot lighter when you're starting to release yourself from that. So last but not least, let's give you a couple of angel numbers for advice. Influence and expansion. Well, they're nice. So angel number 72, your angels encourage you to lead by example in everything you do. You are being called to be an inspiration and guide to others. So I think that gets to the cause, it gets to the experiential, and it gets to not repeating things that are not working, and to make it a true connection, a true loving connection, not just a programmed ideal. And then we have expansion, angel 1212. Your angels are encouraging you to expand your comfort zone, motivate and inspire yourself. Yeah, don't stay stuck in these ideas about what love is, ideas about what happiness is, and so forth, because you have a lot more if you just get in and live life. Live life and don't try and control it. And then you're much more likely to find your heart. So I hope that resonated for you, Pile 1. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 2, to your reading. So these cards are to represent the two different, potentially different or potentially interrelated wicked problems or recurring issues and challenges in your life. We'll look at some heart code oracles for a bit more information on both once we've just looked at the first beginning here, and then we'll move to the tarot. So this is interesting. They may be related, but the first thing has to do with dealing, I think, with anxiety about opportunity around you. There is actually, you're almost pulled in two directions, whether this is around career or a relationship or both. because on one side we have the 57th hexagram, which is called the gentle, and it has the moth as its totem, and it's about intuition and instinct and moving towards something, but with that gentle sort of yin, divine feminine type of energy. You don't have to be a woman, but there's a sort of sense of gentleness around anything that you like to pursue, because I think that you have a highly calibrated emotional core and probably psychic core, and so it's very easy for you to be drawn to something intuitively and gently and then find that it's not what it appeared to be. Because we have nightmare here, needing for psychic protection, shield from bad dreams and so forth, and the carnivorous greenhouse, which is a tempting offer, has a high price. So I think there's a recurring thing with you where you are drawn into relationships, career opportunities, even spiritual pursuits that appear to be very sort of good and hopeful to start with, but have a bit of a whiplash. You seem to attract a kind of predatory energy around you, a kind of darker energy around you. I definitely think around spiritual things you need to make sure you have boundaries and so forth. But if it's around relationship, it may be your very gentleness that attracts people that are not so gentle. So I think that what Spirit is trying to say here is that your intuitive openness, to your receptivity really to people, you need to find some boundaries around that, and you need to pay a lot of attention to dreams, symbols and stuff, particularly nightmares, because otherwise it's hard for you to determine, is this as good as it appears? And sometimes it will be, but I just think that you've often found a relationship, an offer, whatever it might be, has not turned out to be what it seemed to be, has turned out to have strings attached. And in some cases, you may literally have had a relationship or more than one relationship where it's got obsessive and very controlling or something like that. And part of it was that energy being drawn to your gentleness. So there's something about making sure you protect that which is intuitive, gentle, receptive in you, so that you have enough time to work out when something has a price that's too high. Here we have something that almost feels as though you also have a cause, and it may be an environmental cause with the fairy of the green world. The natural world needs you. But I think there is, whether it's literally environmental or whether it is just wanting to give back to the earth and wanting to provide safety and protection to others, maybe because you haven't felt protected yourself. There is this sort of sense of, with the 33rd hexagram of retreat and the record keeper with the whale, that sort of sense of giving refuge to yourself or to others, possibly following on from this. So I feel like this is a pattern where you are drawn into something because of your gentleness and your kindness that turns out to be a bit of a nightmare. Then you retreat and you think that you have to protect others in the process of doing it. And as a result, sometimes you have shocks to the system and so forth. It's like you find you don't have the power that you would have wanted to have, or that you don't have the time that you would want to have. In a very classic reading of this could be someone who ends up in a relationship with somebody who isn't healthy for them. Maybe they have children that they need to look after. So there's sort of like the shock of it all, and the time constraints about fixing it up can be difficult. But that's just an example. I just think that the two things are kind of connected. It's you are drawn into things because of your natural receptivity and your natural psychic ability, actually. But it's not always good, and you don't find out till a bit too late. And then you are always in this sort of retreat where you're not really sure, you're a bit discombobulated about what has happened. So let's see what more practical energy is around this. So around well-being, we have retreat. So it's interesting, there's retreat there. So this is why I think these two things are connected. Around lifestyle, we have productivity, and around relationship, we have distractions. Okay. So I think what may happen in these sorts of relationships, or this sort of pattern, and it could be in career, it could be around productivity, it could be that things don't turn out to be what you expect, you end up with sort of nightmares of collaborators or whatever, and it affects your productivity and you need to retreat. But whatever it is, whether it's difficult romantic relationships or whether it is around career that you're seeing this sort of pattern of things turning bad when they appeared to be very good to start with, the other party or parties are using distractions to stop you from seeing it until it's too late. So there's a hint in here about paying a lot of attention to the signs, and that goes back to the nightmares too. Anything that gets to your intuition on a gut level and doesn't feel as good, don't feel, oh, I have to let this happen. I have to be open, I can't, I need to sort of connect with others and so forth. Look to see whether or not you're being distracted in some way. Look to see whether every time you raise an issue, it's being deflected in some way. There'll be a hint for you there. And then down here about almost the resolution of it, how you protect others and protect yourself. We have nurture. So there's definitely for some of you maybe children or a nurturing instinct that you have that's part of this. We have connection. So you feel very connected to others, feel very connected to the natural world and so forth. And we have attitude. So some of this, I think Spirit is saying it's lovely that you want to protect people and so forth, but some of that is your attitude. Some of it is that is your role, and so you have to constantly do it. And so you're constantly going through this process of trying to be receptive, open, allow things to grow, relationships, career, etc. But then you're almost in that sort of retreat position, connecting with others and nurturing others, possibly at your own expense. So there's something a little bit self-sacrificial about you, pile 2. So that's something that we will explore. So we're going to now use the tarot, and we're going to look at a little bit more information about both these things, and then we're going to see what you don't see. Okay, so up here, I do think most of this is around a relationship. It could be around career as well too, but there's definitely some information that's coming out. If it hasn't come out yet, it's coming out soon. You are going to understand, what that kind of nightmare feeling was. And it's also saying that it is in information coming out that you can resolve some of this and find out whether there's a cause for celebration, a good relationship, or whether what you're dealing with is somebody who is not to be trusted. Because the King of Swords reversed is a bit of a mental manipulator, not necessarily trustworthy, could outright lie. But you will know, you will find out if the person, whether it's a relationship or a business partner or a manager or employee, is going to be a bit of a nightmare, then you're going to find out. And then you can make the decisions about how to emotionally and sort of creatively deal with that, or whether or not that's an issue. Because sometimes, of course, if you go through this pattern over and over, you start to expect the worst. So it could be saying that just because that's happened before doesn't necessarily mean it always is. But if you keep an eye out for the information, see whether there's any distractions or whether you're heading in the same direction, you'll have a better idea about whether you're in something that you should be receiving openly or whether it's something you need boundaries around. Down here, if it gets to the point where you're having to protect yourself and others, you will have the sort of law on your side and so forth. But you may have to come a little bit out of your shell. You can't just fully retreat. Understand that you have a very pragmatic and wise way of looking at things. You have been through this sort of thing before in some way. This is not new to you. With the Fool reversed, you have the wisdom that you need. But you may have to just be a little bit temper what you do in some way, not rush things too much. I think it looks with the cards originally like you always feel like there's suddenly a real time clock on this and you've got to move on it quickly. But this is saying don't rush. You have what you need and justice will be on your side. So it definitely is, it is saying that when you relate to that kind of energy, you're not wrong, but it's then how retreating is not necessarily the way to fix it up. It's more having a pragmatic and strategic way of going forward, but making sure you have all your information and everything at hand. So let's ask what you're not seeing around this at the moment. Okay, I do have to say that for most people who've come to this particular reading, I think most of you are dealing with patterns because you deal with people who are not very honest and you are too trusting. What you are not seeing is how much you are being guilted by somebody, how much somebody tries to upset the apple cart for you and upset your equilibrium to gain a mental advantage over you. There is someone who considers themselves a master negotiator around you. Now, the reality is they aren't as good as they think, and you really do have the right on your side, but they try and guilt you out. They try and make you think you've got to take all the responsibility. They try and make you think that you're the nightmare, you're the one who wants too much, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of mental gameplay going on here. And once you realize that and you take control of the situation, you stop this recurring situation, you stop this wicked problem, you will find that you have the way out. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more detail with oracle cards. So we're going to start with a couple around relationship. I do think a lot of this is around relationship. So firstly, what you would need to heal to get out of these cyclic, recurring or wicked problems. Okay, Phoenix rising. I think that's saying you don't actually really need to heal anything. You just need to own your own strength and your own capacity to resurrect and rise above it, because you can. Just don't let them get into your head, because there is a manipulative energy around you. And it's manipulative both to make you feel you're at fault and also to make you feel you have to take responsibility for everything. But the Phoenix rising is a freedom energy. Let's see what other energy is around your relationships. The equator, to make equal. Yeah, this is the point. Receptivity is wonderful in relationships, in career, whatever it might be, but it needs to be met equal to equal. Receptivity when there is a power imbalance or you're around someone who is a manipulative sort of person or whatever will never reach that sort of sense of equilibrium that is meant for a good relationship. The beauty about this, however, is I feel it is also again saying energetically with justice, which has that kind of sense of intellectual equilibrium, that can take over from temperance, which is the other form of equilibrium that the person is trying to destabilize. So someone deliberately tries to destabilize you, and they use it with words. They use it with guilting you out. They use it with all those sort of things. But remember justice, equilibrium, and so forth in all relationships. That's when you should be receptive and open. At other times, you should have boundaries around it. Okay, let's look at some career energy and advice around this for you, just in case some of this is around career, because it could be. I just feel with a lot of you it's around personal relationships, but it could also be around a career, very manipulative career environment. So we have cycles. Just do it. Okay, so if any of this energy is around your career and people are trying to control you and distract you and so forth, just do it. There are cycles around those sort of games within a workplace. Let them play themselves out. The person will burn themselves out if you don't let them disturb your equilibrium and so forth. Just do what you need to do. Don't get guilted. Don't get manipulated. Let's see what spiritual advice we can give you. Reflection. Aquarius. Okay, Aquarius to me is that getting more detached. See, you're so receptive, it's almost Piscean. I feel like Aquarius is sort of the next step on from that. It's actually in the planetary thing, it's a step before it, but they're connected, they're next to each other. I feel like it's the transpersonal, it's the philosophical, it's getting detached. It's being detached rather than retreating. They're two different things. It's getting a higher level perspective so that you can't be manipulated, but not retreating. You can reflect, you can take time out. That's why don't rush things, but don't go into immediate retreat, because for the energy that you're dealing with, that is sort of like blood in the water for a shark. It's like, oh, good, I'm going for it. So basically be detached rather than emotionally responsive to this scenario. All right. So now I want to use the Stories Oracle that has questions. So it's meant to give a couple of questions that could be helpful for you in dealing with this energy. So the first one is the constellation of Eridanus, and it says, how might you flourish if you gave yourself permission to change? Yeah, if you didn't let people constrain you and guilt trip you into always taking all the responsibility for everything. And then the second one is Capricornius. What if that magic you were looking for was in the work you were avoiding, or in the situations that you were avoiding, the confronting this and dealing with it and so forth. So think about that. Think about how much retreating becomes avoidance and how that perpetuates cycles for you. All right, so we're going to finish up with a couple of things. Firstly, we're going to look at what signs you will see when you're really starting to deal with these problems, and then we're going to look at some angel numbers as a concluding piece of advice for you. So firstly, signs that you will see when you are actually breaking through. Loved ones in spirit. White light. Wow, very spiritual energies around you. So I think that goes back. Nightmares become dreams as opposed to nightmares. You start to see white light, good energy, positive energy, and you possibly will find people from your family or your ancestry being with you in spirit, supporting you. I think it suggests they're there anyway, that there is that support for you, so you can come out of that kind of nightmare cycle into the white light. And you may read about white light, you may see white light, or you may see angelic sort of beings and so forth in dreams, I think. All right, last but not least, talking of angelic beings, let's ask for a couple of angel numbers to help you, pile 2. Independence, and family. All right, so I do think some of you, there might be family sort of issues around this. Family ties, family obligations and so forth. Firstly, with independence, that's 1717. Your angels are reminding you to depend on yourself, stand up for yourself and do the right thing. So don't let people manipulate you. And family, 8558. You are being encouraged to come out from isolation. So yes, don't retreat too much. You need nurturing love and support from friends and family. Some of it may be in dreams and so forth from those who have passed on, but others can help you. Whatever this scenario is, however dark it might seem, retreating into isolation will not help it. Others will help you. So that's a very encouraging last message for you. So I hope that resonates for you, pile 2. It is pretty difficult energy, but I guess these readings were likely to be touching on things like this. So I hope it's helpful. I hope it resonates. I hope it gives you some strategies. If you enjoyed the reading, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. So these cards represent the 2 areas that we're going to look at, which I think in this case are quite related. Definitely. And this will give us a sense about this, and it could be either a recurring issue that comes up, or it could be, I think, a wicked problem that you're sorting through that has 2 aspects to it, almost 2 sort of steps to it. So take whichever it applies for you. But what we're seeing here is this is quite specific, I think. I think the people who've come to this reading, if you've come to the right reading, you've had something happen probably around your career, your creativity. It could also be around relationship, but it's where your reputation, your integrity has been called into question. It's possible that people, and this may be something that's happened in the past and you're still dealing with it, like there's some sort of reputation. It could be sort of somebody who's had cancel culture, for instance, on the internet, and you're having to sort of resurrect and redeem your integrity and your sense of self and how people see you. It could have been an injustice that was done to you. I think that it is about something unjust, but I suspect it's something where maybe there was what could have been a quick fix that didn't work out to be quite as good as it appeared. And this has had an impact on your integrity, on how you're viewed and so forth, because we have the 18th hexagram, which is work on what has been spoiled. It is saying that something has had issues around it. It needs healing, correction and justice. And the Jaguar is there to help towards integrity, towards who you are in the world, towards your strength in the world. So there's something that you need to write now, something significant that has happened, or there is a pattern of this that happens to you. Either way, you get caught in the pattern of it. You get caught in how it imprisons you and it defines you. And with the Sea Beacon Fairy, it suggests that usually what happens in this situation, if it recurs, or what is happening now or has just happened if it's a wicked problem, is that there was a way through, a light in the darkness, but it was perhaps not as good as it appeared, or it had too high a cost. So it really does have a feeling of someone who had to deal with some sort of PR sort of fix-up have some sort of PR person come in and help after some sort of scandal that may or may not have been fair. I actually don't think in most cases it's fair, but whether or not that had its own cost, or whether it's actually brought up a more recurring issue that you now have to deal with. There's something about your integrity, there's something about your presence in the world, whether it's around relationships in your family and friendship circle, whether it's around career, whether it's around being on the world stage, could be any of those things, but there's something to be repaired, and there is a battle to be had. Like whatever this pattern is, if it's a pattern or whatever has happened, you can't just sweep it under the carpet. You have to take on the Badger area of warrior here, the opposition. The 38th hexagram is about opposition, and it requires determination and unswerving purpose. You need to be able to take this head on. Some of it is connected to your own ambitions with Burnt by the Sun. So there's almost an Icarus feeling about this to some degree. For some of you, you may have flown so high in something and been so close to the glittering prizes that envy and people taking stuff from you, and that's very possible with the Fairy of the Highlands there. Someone took from you what was your due, what you should have achieved, what you should have become famous for, whatever it might be. And you're going to have to gain that back somehow, even though it looks as though part of the strategy to deal with you and to take it was to somehow cast a question over your integrity or your capability or your ownership of the thing. So there's definitely an injustice that needs to be righted here. And if it's around relationship, then it's got to do with a very competitive person that you've been in the relationship with, and you really do have to have the battle. You can't just look for the quick fix. That's not going to sort it out for you. Let's get a little bit more specific information about energy around it. So around health, we have autoimmune. Around lifestyle, we have procrastination. And around relationship, we have criticism. Yeah, you are facing criticism, I think. Definitely. And you do need to do the battle, but you're actually procrastinating and doing that. You don't want to do that. You wanted to actually be able to take all your energy forward for whatever this thing is that you're being critiqued on or is being taken from you. Autoimmune is when the body turns against itself. So I suspect in this situation, it's not so much that you would have autoimmune issues. I mean, maybe you do, and they'll flare up because of the issues around this, but I think it's more likely to be it's your own way of approaching things that kind of makes it worse for yourself. So you really want to find the way out that isn't full of conflict. You don't want conflict, but it's coming to the time when you're actually going to have to take it head on. So here we have mantra, advance, and surprise. Okay, so I think what Spirit is saying is that if you're feeling that tension and that sort of worry about it, because this is quite a heavy situation, I think, go into mantras, go into the sort of relaxation and meditation that helps you get prepared and gets you ready and makes you believe in yourself so that you can advance. You don't stay stuck thinking, oh, can somebody fix it up for me? You need to fix this. When you do, I think you will have a surprise. You'll have a surprise about how maybe easy it was, or you may be surprised to find out around certain relationships what those relationships really were as opposed to what you thought. And that could either be a surprise for the better or not. It will depend on the scenario. But it's very much saying, get that mantra in your head about that you can actually do this battle and advance. Don't procrastinate. Don't worry about criticism. You may be surprised about what you hear from certain people, but you will move forward if you do it. Don't turn your own energy against yourself. Okay, so we're going to use tarot to get a little bit more information on each of these, and then we're going to look at what you don't know about the situation. Okay, really interests me that we've got 3 queens just out of 8 cards there. My sense is, I mean, some of this could be around a romantic relationship, but I think for most of you this is more around career, creativity, collaboration. I feel as though this is an issue with someone who is a peer, but they weren't what they appeared. They appeared to be a good connection for you, maybe even a good collaborator, but they were false. They weren't true around it. And they wanted your sense of material outcomes, your sense of skill, your sense of groundedness, because they don't really know who they are. So they're actually trying to almost steal your identity, steal your creativity, whatever it might be. They think that's their shortcut, in actual fact. They don't want to have to go through the getting of wisdom at all. They want to get to you, to where you are. But I think probably like organisationally or academically or whatever, your peers, but you are actually more developed than them, and they know that, and that they're trying to take from you. So understanding that you are in fact ahead of this person. That's why you can be pragmatic about how to deal with it. You don't need to procrastinate. You don't need to worry, and you shouldn't look for the shortcut either. You should look for the thing that comes from what created you, because whatever this is you. It's not them. They're trying to take it on in some way. Down here, you can then get the return on investment. So all is not lost, it is saying. Even if it feels like it is, if you actually stand up for it, you've got the law on your side, I would say, with the Queen of Swords there. Certainly the arguments on your side. This person would go to pieces if you deal with them straight on. Absolutely. This is saying, however, that you have choices around it. You can incrementally, you don't have to completely destroy the relationship. You don't have to completely walk away from whatever. There's incremental change that you can make and decisions that you can make that brings this back. But you just have to stand in your own truth. You have to stand in your own queendom. And you don't have to be a woman for this. It's just that sort of sense of strength and ownership and knowing yourself that comes with the Queen energy in the tarot, so that you get the return on investment. So it's certainly saying all is not lost. So let's see what it is that you don't know. Oh, and there's another Queen. Wow. You don't know how weak this other person is. That's the thing. They're very emotionally driven, quite dramatic. And they probably would sling all sorts of criticism and accusations at you to try and deflect from the fact of what they're doing. But they have no sense of themselves. This is a very narcissistic sort of feeling. I think you're dealing with a very narcissistic sort of person. They're kind of empty and they're very emotionally unhappy and so forth. They look at you and you would probably say, I think, well, everything's not sort of, sunshine and puppies in my life. Why do you want to be like me? Why do you want what I have? But you represent something to them. And I think you underestimate what you represent. If you understood that, then you would feel much more able to take it forward. So really the issue around this, whether it's sort of something that happens to you a bit or whether it's just something that's happened now that feels like a wicked problem, is owning your own queendom, as I say, owning who you really are and your strength and being able to be a warrior when you need to be a warrior. Because you do need to sort these things out. Otherwise, you create the world that they want. You create narcissistic supply for them as opposed to something that you want. But it is time to own who you are. That's the key thing for you. So let's have a look at some relationship energy. So firstly, what you might need to heal to really move forward and have this bravery and stand up for yourself. Pile 3. Pride. See, this card would often say pride was an issue, I would expect, and that you don't need to be too proud. But in your case, it's the opposite. You're dealing with someone with wounded pride and with an emptiness and so forth, but you need to have some more pride. You need to really understand that, and you need to understand that somebody who attacks your reputation and that kind of thing as a way to try and take something from you, you have to have the pride to step forward and fight for it, because you've earned what you've done. They haven't earned what they've done. Okay, let's see what energy would help you around the relationships. Storms, yeah. Cleansing, because this is about cleansing. You have to take it on. If you step away and let this happen, it will become a recurring problem, pile 3. You will find that this happens more often, either via the same person or from others, because you have to really back yourself and stand in the truth of who you are. And even if it takes a little bit of time and it's tricky and it's difficult, don't take the shortcut out, don't take the compromise, stand in your truth. It's very clear. Let's see what career advice is given, because I think for a lot of you this is probably around career. Presentation. Reflect and set goals. Okay. Present yourself with style and feminine flair. Present yourself, I think, is the key bits there, and what you've brought to things and what is your personal style. Don't be shy, don't retreat. Stand in that truth, and then reflect on what's occurred and set your next goals. So focus your intent by setting some goals. Don't just be in a reactive mode, because there is something a bit reactive about this. It does look like it's been quite a shock to the system that this sort of thing has happened or keeps happening, whichever is the case. But if you present yourself in your truth and your power and you set goals and you move forward, it's much harder for somebody to sort of pull that energy away from you. Let's give you some spiritual energy to help. Taurus and October moon. So October moon is about a time to communicate with spirit and realign your purpose. So that it is saying that there's a spiritual connection, which probably links back to the concept of using mantras and so forth to help you set your goals and to communicate with spirit. And then Taurus is about sometimes needing to be a bit stubborn and wanting what you want to enjoy in the life and not to have anybody take the enjoyment of life away from you, you know, to own what is yours. That is fine. Don't let people guilt trip you out of it in some way. All right. So let's look at three last things. Firstly, I want to use the Stories Oracle, which is an oracle with constellations, and there's a question with them. So it's just questions that might help you reflect and deal with this issue, pile 3. So firstly, we have Boots, and the question is, what if everything isn't always fair? Yeah, it isn't always fair. Like, you have a right to feel that this is unjust because it is unjust. You're not being histrionic about it. You're not being, I'm the center of the universe. All these sort of things could be thrown at you as criticisms, but it's all a reflection of this other person or other people that are doing this. Okay, and the other question is Hercules. Wow. Ask yourself, what are you really fighting for? And that's about reflecting and setting your goals. When you go into the battle, make it to be about what you really do want to have come out of this. If it's bringing your reputation back, that's one thing. If it's getting a creative project back, if it's getting a relationship back, whatever it might be, do your goals around what you're prepared to fight for, because that's what really matters to you. Anything that you are actually prepared to fight for, and not look for the easy way out or the compromise way out. Okay, so to finish off, firstly, I want to look at a couple of cards to show what signs you will see when you are heading in the right direction, and then we're going to look at some angelic numbers for final guidance and support for you, pile 3. Travel and hearts. Okay, so it may be that you start to travel around your work or something like that. You may sort of start to send whatever you're doing out across the world or across the nation or whatever. It could also just be that you read about travel, you think about holidays, you see advertisements for travel, any of those sort of things. Pay attention to what's going on at that time. It might be giving you a sign. And then hearts could be a sense of something from the heart, your heart chakra opening, but it could also be that you hear songs about hearts, you read about romances, you see hearts on sort of iconography or on fashion or something like that. So look out for those sort of signs and what that's telling you about where you're going and getting towards what matters to you, what you would truly want to fight for. Okay, last but not least, let's pull a couple of angel numbers for you. That's nice. Success and hesitation. Okay, so this says, firstly, success, 7575. Your angels are reminding you of ideas and thoughts you're intuitively receiving. Trust your inner knowing and avoid negative opinions of others. So you don't let other people get in the way of this. You are meant to have success. You're meant to be able to take that back if someone's trying to take it from you. The angel of hesitation, 3333. Your angels are motivating you to proceed with stepping into the unknown and starting new projects. You will prevail. So again, don't hesitate. Don't look for the easy way out. Success can be yours, but you need to be prepared to fight for things. So work out what it is that really matters to you. Fight for that without hesitation. So pile 3, I hope that that's helpful. I hope you resonated to it. It was quite specific. So as I say, I think you would have known quite early in the reading if this was the right one for you. If so, I hope it's given you some good guidance from Spirit and help. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 4, to your reading. So these cards represent the two areas that may or may not be interrelated and that may or may not be recurring situations that you keep coming up against or wicked problems. I think for you it's primarily recurring issues because of the nature of these cards. In particular, because we have the 3 witchy sisters first in the first area. And one of the key things that talks about is that things come in cycles of 3. So it's saying whatever this issue is, if you've had it once before, it will come twice more. If you've had it twice, it will come once more. And if this is the 3rd time that something has occurred to you, then it will be the last time. So on one level, if you're coming here about recurring things, if you're in that 3rd time, then you can go, well, that's great. It's actually going to resolve itself in some ways. If you are feeling more at the beginning of that cycle, it's the first time you've come across it, then maybe to avoid needing to go through it twice, you can take some of the advice from here and see what Spirit can tell you. Whatever this is, though, whatever these things are, it comes from the fact that you are a very deep person. I think you're very, very psychic. I think you're very emotionally deep. And what I'm getting is that some of the energy around this is almost the energy of a performer or the energy of an artist in some way. And so some of your issues that you come up against are the themes of an artist who works at the depths, who works intuitively, who works with sort of, muse energy, that kind of thing. And that it takes you into those depths sometimes. So with this first one, where there's something that keeps recurring, there is an issue around going into your subconscious. With the 36th hexagram, the darkening of the light, this is where there is that sort of deeper inner knowing and so forth, and sometimes almost the dark night of the soul, with the crayfish, which is a totem to sort of be protective in that kind of energy. It's very much connected to the cycles of the moon, very emotional. It tends to be very yin oriented, very yielding and receptive and so forth. So there is something, and it's got to do, that's something I think that's come from your youth, something from your childhood, something that recurs, I think. And so it could be sort of recurring sort of relationships like family relationships or friendships that you had when you were young. But there's something about this where you return to those patterns of your youth, and that is what makes this thing recur. So it could be that if you're in a relationship and you go into the depths with it and the person doesn't meet you at those depths, it may be that takes you back to a period of time when you were young, a recurring sort of sense maybe of being different, being unusual, neurodivergent, something like that, something that made you feel a little bit sort of separate. It may even be that sometimes you feel very young compared to the people that you're around, you're working with, that you want to be in a relationship or whatever, because there's almost an eternal innocence around this. But there is meant to be a maturation process with the 3 witchy sisters. This actually could connect to some sort of relationship around siblings with those two together, something from childhood. But it's got to do with the pattern then of going into the depths. And I guess the question you always have to ask when you do that is, are you going and finding something that helps you? Are you finding something that just darkens your light, that dims your light in some way? Because here we have something that looks a little bit more just about being witness to a broken heart, to something not working out. So it could be that you were a witness to something like that in your family, and it's permeated your idea about relationships. It could also be that you have gone through a very significant heartbreak and you want to bear witness to it, maybe creatively, I think, very sort of dreamlike sort of way, in a movie or in a song or something like that. Because with the 41st hexagram of decrease, that's about dream world fantasy, envisaging things with the loon sort of moving through water. So it's very emotional. Everything in this is very emotional, very creative, very subconscious, very archetypal. So it just feels to me like this pattern, if it is just a pattern you keep going through around relationships that don't meet you at the emotional depths that you're at, that you work at an emotional pitch that others don't reach for the most part, then it may keep recurring until you find a way to create in a way that draws the right people to you. So I think that creativity, communication, expression is the way to sort your way through this. Not only then to to bear witness to your own broken heart and therefore to mend it and to have a better pattern, but also to find the right person, the person that can connect with you at this kind of level, because you go to depths that most people don't go to, and that's your strength, but it's also your Achilles heel. Let's see what very practical energies there are around this. So we have pause around well-being, attentiveness around lifestyle and career, and we have lust around relationships. So you may fall into lust quite often. You may, because of that depth, and you may connect a lustful feeling with deep emotion. Sometimes maybe that doesn't reach the levels that you want, and that's where the sort of heartbreak comes from. This is sort of saying, if you are very strongly attracted to people, press pause to start with, allow yourself time out and pay attention to what's going on. So whether if that's in your career, pay attention, but more generally pay attention to the relationships around you, because you go to this depth, you go to a depth of emotion very quickly. I think you fall in love very quickly. But it is important to be able to tell the difference between just a very strong attraction and something that can meet you at that same level. And we're looking here at dealing with the almost the immortalizing, in a way, of what has occurred, so that you can then have it as a creative project or a song or something, so that it doesn't permeate all your relationships. We have treatment. We have investor, okay? And we have authentic. See, treatment, I think, is the pause, take the time out, maybe get some treatment, get some therapy or something if you are finding it hard to deal with some of the emotional issues here. But I think you'll sublimate a lot of it through creativity. And I think if you do that, you're going to find you'll get investors, sponsors, a manager, something like that. I just feel like there's a real way of taking this depth that you have and making it creative and actually making money out of it. And if you see it that way and pay attention to how you can do that, then I think you feel more in control of it and less sort of just subject to your emotions in some way. There's a way of making this your career. It's a way of making it an investment. It's a way of bringing in money, all of those sorts of things. And it's because you're authentic. You're really the real deal. If you were to write songs, they're the real deal. If you were to write novels, they're going to touch the hearts. You really are authentic. It goes so deep, is what I'm saying. But your life is almost like an open wound. So the issue is, how do you make that wound heal, and how do you then take from that something that is creatively beautiful and something that also helps you draw in the right person? Because I think that's the thing. It's like if you started to communicate it through creativity in some way, that draws the right person, not the more superficial ones, in. So let's see what advice Spirit wants to give around tarot. Firstly, for each of these, and then what you're not seeing at the moment. Yep. So, firstly, up here in that sort of like open wound, heart is so deep. Does anybody else have this extraordinary sensitivity and different way of looking at the world that you have? I think that you've come across at least one person who's highly critical of that, or who tries to straitjacket you into being something else, or determine what you should think about things. And they've had an impact on your sense of light and your sense of capacity to come out of the subconscious and the depths and so forth. But the thing is that you really are able to bring this into being much more than you think. You doubt your capacity to turn this pain into something that's more material, but in fact, that is your way through. That is your way not only to resolve emotional issues and bring in better relationships, ones that are worth the investment and ones that you can feel loyal and committed to, but they literally are potentially a way towards money, stability and so forth for you through a creative means. But you've suppressed that. You go within yourself and you almost attack yourself with your sensitivity as opposed to expressing it. But if you expressed it there's a real blessing energy around that, and a feeling of like starting to get a sense of stability and making yourself out of it, and creatively sort of firing up the sun as well. So I think that you've been programmed when you were young that you were too emotional, too sensitive, too this, too that. And maybe you're even in a family that said, no, you've got to go off and be a doctor or a lawyer or something. But you're the soul of a poet, you're the soul of an artist, you're the soul of a singer. There's something like that that will really help you process this information and then bring better emotional things in. So let's ask what you don't see. Okay, I think all this is saying is that you don't see yet there is a way to the peace of mind and the calm. You're still kind of trapped in the sense of heartache, and that defines you in some way, that the relationships won't work out, that you're too sensitive, all of those sort of things. But it's a mental trap as much as anything else that leeches some of that enjoyment. The reality is peace of mind is there. It's just using your authentic voice and what you've gone through, bear witness to it through something creative. That is the way that you can find the way through, but you've not seen that yet. You haven't trusted that in yourself in whatever way you need it. Even if you're doing things creatively, you've got to really believe in it, because you really have something to offer in that space. Okay, so let's have a look at some other oracles. Let's have a look firstly at a couple around relationships. So firstly, what you need to heal to be really able to work through this energy, and I think turn it into something quite spectacular. So it says pay attention to signs. So yeah, you go so deep within yourself, you may not see what's going on around you as much. You may find it hard sometimes to understand the environment you're in, because I feel like you're very different and you're very sensitive, and you have to protect yourself. But pay attention to signs. I think Spirit's trying to talk to you, trying to get you to see this way through to get to the Six of Swords. And I feel like one of the signs might be owls. Looking up at the owl up there, I think that might be a totem for you. Let's see what energy around relationships could be helpful. Breath, life. You just breathe. Just breathe and believe in yourself, and use that kind of energy around, maybe that's part of the treatment, breath work, meditative work, that kind of thing. Breath, let it through, let it process through. You're very, very water oriented, very emotion oriented. This is also about freeing your intellectual energy, the breath, the life breath, and so forth. Let's see what advice Spirit has around career. Ego trap. And reflect and set goals. So that one turned up for somebody else, so you may have come to more than one reading, some of you. I think the interesting thing about the ego trap turning up here is that I think you've been conditioned to think doing something creative, expressing yourself or whatever is egotistical. I don't think that's the case. But it is asking, are you too busy to create your dream business? So are you in a situation where you've got yourself caught in living up to other people's expectations and so forth, so that you've got status or whatever it is, and you're not actually pursuing what's authentic to you? If that's the case, reflect and set goals. Either don't worry about ego, because this is not about ego, it's authentic, it's expression, and then set your goals, or think about whether or not you follow pathways to fit other people's definition of success, and now start to recalibrate and reset your goals. All right, let's ask for spiritual advice for you. Mercury and Guardian. Okay. So I think Mercury may be a guardian for you, actually. Mercury is mercurial. Mercury is very much a communicator, a great communicator, a bit of a trickster when necessary. If Mercury was a guardian for you, it would be watching over what could be said to you and how much that gets into you. It may in fact even be that Mercury coaxes you into the depths, rather than you live in this sort of like mental energy that is perhaps not helping you. But it is the great communicator as well too. So I think if you were to use your creative energy and your sensitivity to communicate, Mercury would be right there with you and would really help that message get across and that authenticity get across and guard you from any of the sort of egos and other issues that can occur when you're doing that. So I definitely think it's saying over and over, this is something to do. So to finish off, there's 3 things I want to do. Firstly, I want to draw a couple of cards from the Stories Oracle, which has constellations and questions. So they're just meant to be questions that might be helpful for you in sorting through these issues. So firstly, we have Libra. What if you honoured that some things are outside of your control? So maybe part of the reason you go into the depths is to feel if you can control nothing else, you can control your feeling and bear witness to it. But maybe this is saying that not everybody's going to understand you, not everybody's going to connect to you, but the right people will. And if you allow that you don't have to be all things to all people and you can be different and you don't have to control everything, then that might be a liberating force for you. Okay, let's look at the second question. And we've got Cygnus. What if love is the bridge between you and everything? Yeah, and what if your feelings, your heart, your soul, the things that you bear witness to are what connects you to the world, to the communication with the world? There's something there. There's something in your enormous emotion and enormous sensitivity and enormous creativity that would connect you to the world if you allowed it to. All right. So now we're going to ask what signs you will see when you are heading in the right direction for resolving these issues. Epiphany and Phoenix, lovely. Okay. So I think once you've had the aha moment, once you realise that your sensitivity and difference is precisely the thing that's going to make you shine, then you will rise like a phoenix. You will see that it is not just about feeling everything so deeply, it's about expressing it creatively, resplendently in the world. And I think those symbols, maybe a light bulb going off, maybe seeing a phoenix, reading about a phoenix and so forth, these things will tell you that you're getting there. So to finish off pile 4, I just want to pull a couple of angel numbers for you, just for some final advice from Spirit about becoming this phoenix, because I think that's what you're meant to do. That's why you're going through this sort of recurring sort of issue around emotion, because it's meant to prod you into being the great creator that you were born to be. So we've got finances and discernment. Okay. So 888, financial improvements are up ahead. Your angels are asking you to work smarter with consistency, diligence, balance and rest. So if you're worried about money around this, it looks like money will come in. That's why I think that you could actually make money out of this and get a manager or production company or something behind you. So once you really focus this, you can bring the manifestation of money in. And then we have discernment, 7070. Your angels are helping you with understanding and comprehension. Your abilities are improving and you are being acknowledged for them. So your angels are there. They are seeing what you can do. And this will help your discernment to know how to express this energy and how to create what you need to do. Because I really do, I feel it very, very strongly. You're meant to be a creative force in this world. And what you've gone through with your heightened emotional sensitivity, and I think heightened psychic antenna actually, is all grist to that particular mill. And when you have that aha moment, that epiphany about that, then the only way is up. So I hope that helps for you, pile 4. I hope that you resonate to that and enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you care to share about it, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.